Hello, I'm Eric Snodgrass, Principal Atmospheric Scientist at Nutrient Ag Solutions, and I want to thank you for watching this weekly Ag Weather Update brought to you by the Farm Credit Associations of North Carolina. We're going to go back to 1 week ago. I released this map and showed it to you last Monday. We were looking at what the National Weather Service was calling across parts of North Carolina, and that was generally quite a bit of thunderstorm activity this past week, but you can see the distribution of precipitation, and it's quite interesting to see that we were forecasting our heaviest rains along the coast and also in the mountains, and this is what even the European model is picking up on, a very similar pattern. But what this really demonstrates for you is that we're in a time of year where without well-defined frontal boundaries, it will be nearly impossible to forecast, well, what actually happened. This is the last 7 days of precipitation as measured by radar. We can see that where we thought we were going to get some heavy rain, we didn't, and certainly where we thought we weren't, we did. And I'm talking about this pocket right in through here, where not only did some of these storms put down easily 2 to 4 inches of rainfall, some locally heavier amounts, but also quite a bit of severe wind. We saw on the 17th and the 18th a few of these thunderstorm complexes come through and give us numerous severe wind reports, producing some damage on some of our fields. Now, seeing what happened over the last weekend, let's take a look at what we did get at the end of the weekend on Sunday. This animation that keeps flashing before you here shows you anywhere where we tied or broke or got very close to a record high temperature. And you're going to see that on Sunday afternoon. Watch it again sort of right here, right there. That was when we saw the peak in that heat, and that heat isn't going anywhere anytime soon. We can see here, let me go back, we can see here that along the eastern part of the United States, we do have heat advisories. And if we zoom in now, we can see that basically from Fayetteville all the way to Roanoke Rapids, we have got excessive heat warnings today. Now, these warnings are set to expire tonight, but I want to show you something. These are the projected high temperatures today when you look at the heat index values. Another way we look at that is called the apparent temperature, same thing. Okay, what we see here is a lot of triple-digit heat index values. Now, I know that excessive heat warnings expire tonight, but we can see that even going into tomorrow, there's still going to be from 100 to 103 degrees across much of the state. And then as you get into Wednesday, once again, we see a lot of, 101, 102, 103s in terms of our heat index. We've got very high temperatures that are getting into the 90s, but we've also got the high humidity. And it lasts all the way till Thursday before I think things start to break down by the end of the week on Friday. So another way of looking at this heat, I'm going to give you a national perspective on this, okay? But another way of looking at this heat is looking at the total accumulated growing degree day units that we've basically had add up since April 1st. So this analysis is April 1st through July the 18th, and across much of the state of North Carolina, we're sitting somewhere, if you get away from the mountains, between about 1,800 and 2,300 GDUs accumulated so far this year. Now, if we take a look at this from another perspective, and again, this is all beginning on April the 1st, we can see that we're actually in deficit compared to average. We're down about anywhere between 90 to 190 GDUs across the state. And so this has been one of those summers where we've largely avoided long duration heat, and we've just not been accumulating a lot of these GDUs, and a lot of this deficit was early in the season, back in April and early May. So thinking about corn, a corn crop, and I just had to do the analysis starting it on the 1st here, but I was going to say if we assume that the corn crop needs 2,500 GDUs to reach maturity, where are we currently situated across the state of North Carolina? In other words, what percent of 2,500 GDUs have we already accumulated? And we generally see that once you get out of the mountains, we're about 70 to 90% in terms of that accumulation. So this would mean that this crop is moving along pretty quickly. I know a lot of folks here planted earlier in this and double crop. We put other crops in or put a second crop of corn in and try to beat that first frost that comes out at the, deep into November. So just want to give you some perspective on this. Now, any calculation of a growing degree day unit stops at a high temperature of 86. So we say that anything above 86 degrees Fahrenheit can be called a stress degree day. And what we notice here is that across the state of North Carolina, we haven't yet exceeded the magic number of 140. Elwyn Taylor, as I reported to you last week, did some research that found for dryland corn, if you get above 140 stress degree units during the growing season, that you tend to see yield loss. So where all that heat has really been, as you can see here, is in the South Central Plains and across much of the Carolinas. We just haven't gotten there yet. And to put a point on this, let me just show you this graphic here. April 1st here, all the way until just yesterday, and you're looking at the daily high and low temperatures. Those are the blue bars, but the max temperatures are way up here and the mins are way down there. And normal sits right in between these two lines I just drew. And what you don't see is a whole lot of sustained days that are getting way up here close to the record highs. Especially, look at this. This is really, really steady normal weather going from the end of June up until just recently. Yeah, your high temperatures are a little bit warmer than normal, but you're not outside of the range of unexpected temperatures here in the Raleigh-Durham area. So that's what we're looking at in this particular figure. Now, as we move forward, we do have thunderstorm risk every day this week. You're going to see generally a 20 to up to 70% chance of seeing some thunderstorms. Today, we do have the risk of some of those storms being severe. Same thing for tomorrow, especially across the northern part of the state. And as we look out into Wednesday, the severe weather threat moves to our north, but I still think you're going to see storms each day this week. One thing I will comment about the winds, outside of thunderstorms, things are relatively stagnant to begin the week in terms of our wind speeds. So we're not exactly sitting in a regime that is telling us where the storms are coming from and when they're going to get here due to frontal boundary passages. That's what we don't have. A lot of this is kind of hit or miss on the heat of the day. So as we watch this animation moving forward, we're going to just play through our high resolution NAM model. Notice that by this afternoon and this evening, you see how the model really wants to just pop storms up here across the central part of the state. It seems to be just the way it's going to be. Now, will it actually be right where the model's putting it? No. But as we play it forward, you'll go through the overnight hours into early Tuesday morning. Watch what happens again Tuesday afternoon and evening. We just continue to see those storms pop here on the heat of the day. So it's going to be another week of being very difficult to pin down who's going to get the rain and who isn't. I do want to bring one thing to your attention for the corn and soybean farmers across the state of North Carolina. This part of Iowa has been extremely dry, and this from Des Moines over to like Carroll, Iowa, this is an area that is extremely productive for corn and soybeans, especially corn. And right now the models are forecasting through early tomorrow morning decent rains in this area, which would kind of fill in the last big gap in the corn belt of where we have really dry conditions. What's important to understand about that is, should this particular rainfall event occur, that's really only going to leave just a few spots around much of the eastern corn belt where we still have patchy drought, but this will probably push those national yield estimates even higher if the rain does come through in this area. So just keep an eye on that. Let's look at it another way. This is total accumulated precipitation from the latest from the National Weather Service. And we see, again, with the storms that are coming through this week, and I'll show you their timing, we have across the state generally half an inch, to some places an inch and a half, but you will likely see some spots get locally heavier rainfall underneath the thunderstorms. Now to the south, where higher pressure sits, very stagnant conditions and drier there, but there's this lingering frontal boundary sitting in here, and building on the moisture coming off of the Atlantic and out of the Gulf, we're going to have plenty of humidity to get these storms to pop. So keeping a national perspective here, but zooming in on North Carolina, this is what the European model is calling for. So a little bit different from what the National Weather Service is saying. It's trying to keep the wetter conditions well away from the coast and much further inland over toward, again, like Raleigh area, where maybe upwards of 3/4 of an inch to an inch of rainfall could hit this week. What about the GFS? Well, the GFS wants to sweep through quite a bit more rainfall. So we see pockets here where there may be 2.5 inches of rain this week, but broader area of at least an inch of rain across the state. So again, these are the models struggling to handle convection or thunderstorm activity. They're just not designed to do that because they can't be. If we designed every weather forecast model to be able to handle thunderstorms, we would need computers, and this is not an exaggeration, 3 orders of magnitude faster, 1,000 times faster than they currently are, just to run the simulations. So we have to make cuts in some places, and putting in convective parameters is one of those areas. In terms of tropical activity, things are starting to shape up, be a little bit more active. The National Hurricane Center has given this a 20% chance of developing. There's a weak wave right here, but it's going to be moving over toward Texas and Louisiana. And we're just going to keep it also an eye down here in the main development region. I'm going to show you those ocean temperatures in a few moments to let you know why I think that the tropics still have a lot of potential for this upcoming season. So what's going on with our jet stream? It's way north, way up here, okay? And we have early this week this ridge right in place right here. Now it is that ridge that's helping us early this week achieve those very, very high temperatures. But look at what happens by the time we get toward the weekend. You see the jet stream still stays very far to the north, but the ridge then moves over here to like Kansas City. And as a result of that, we're going to be getting northwest flow and potentially increased thunderstorm activity and also a cooler weekend. But understanding when and where those storms are going to come through is going to be very challenging. But let's get at least a good look at what the European model is saying right now. Let's play this forward, but come back and watch the daily events take place. Monday afternoon and evening, you're going to just see splashes of green in the European model most days right here. And that is just usually going to happen around 0Z, which is around 7 p.m., which is when these storms are just going to pop on the afternoon heat. But there is a weak frontal boundary sitting right in through this area just to our north, kind of aligned with the Appalachian Mountains. As we go forward, this is now in the overnight hours and early morning on Tuesday. Now remember what I told you about Iowa. See, the European model is trying to bring in decent precipitation for this area as well. We got to watch it carefully because we could also see some flash flooding to the south of there. But coming back over to North Carolina, watch Tuesday afternoon. There it is. Storms pop again. 50% chance is what I would give you on getting a thunderstorm any day at the beginning of this week. As we move forward into the overnight hours on Tuesday, getting into Wednesday morning, afternoon, and evening, this is where we finally start to see the frontal boundary, which is sitting here. It's hard to see, I know, but it's coming through, again, giving us those chances of storms. But as we get toward the end of the week, this is now Thursday morning, Thursday afternoon and evening. Now you can see it. The frontal boundary is pushing through here. The ridge is building back into the central part of the United States. So as we go through the end of the week, this is now Friday morning, Friday afternoon. See it there? Now the storms are starting to pop here toward the end of our week on Friday and then Friday night. And it's probably going to set us up as we move forward for a stormy start to Saturday and even keeping those storms around into Sunday and Monday. So we're just in a normal thunderstorm type regime, no major fronts. So just a weak one coming through at the end of the week. It's just going to take the edge off the temperatures, but really keep us going with our thunderstorm activity. So that gets you out about a week. Now beyond that, take a look at where that ridge goes. This is by Saturday night. It's now sitting over Illinois. And then as we move it all the way out to day 10, which would be the 30th, look at how the flow opens up like this. Now what this particular setup will do, like we talked about last week with the ridge west, we will get some northwest flow, and it gets pretty well pronounced by the time we get into the beginning of August, with the ridge anchored way back here over the Four Corner states. The question becomes, how robust of a trough is this? Because if that trough does really show up like it does, well, this is going to put more thunderstorm activity here and not necessarily let those, those ridge riding squall lines come all the way into the Carolinas, which is why we tend to see both in the GFS ensemble and the European more stormy activity here, see it in both models, while they're trying to call for drier conditions in the Carolinas. I'm going to tell you something. Nothing is shutting down the Gulf of Mexico moisture transport. Nothing's shutting down the Atlantic from pushing moisture. And in fact, the big subtropical high, I'll draw over here on the map on the left, is sitting way off here, and it's still pumping moisture in to the east coast of the United States. So I still think we're going to see scattered storms every day. But I think most of your severe weather activity is going to be confined here as we work our way out into week 2, which ends on August 3rd. Now, what about those temperatures? Now, these are actual temperatures. I showed you heat index values earlier. So we're talking about actual highs getting up into the mid to upper 90s today, and you can see that lasting into tomorrow. Here's Wednesday. You see a little bit cooler. Thursday, about the same. But as we get toward the weekend, Friday, let's try this again. As we get toward the weekend, let's watch it all play out here. Here we go. Here is Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. So you see toward the end of the week, we have our high temperatures that are no longer in the deep into the 90s, but are instead in the low 90s. And what we're also going to be seeing is that increased thunderstorm activity, bringing in, well, better chances for, having storms clean things out and cool things off. Looking out here into the 6 to 10 day time period, though, because the ridging tends to stay somewhere in the central United States, we will see warmer than average conditions across much of the eastern part of North America. And that tends to last all the way out until, the beginning of August. As you can see here, the model's really trying to keep temperatures on the warmer side of things, despite the forecast showing a broader trough setting up here. That trough feature is a reflection of the real position of the jet stream, which is way up here in Canada. All right. So, a couple of other things to think about. This is very interesting. I watched all weekend long one of our models called the CFSV2. It's a model run in the United States. It gave me 5 separate days where we were forecasting this week of the 9th through the 15th of August as having much cooler weather, kind of sweep through the Corn Belt, getting all the way over to the Carolinas, so cool down. But then the latest model run, the one that just came out last night, said now forget it and brought back the heat. What I'm telling you is we're in a time period of very low predictability, and what we're waiting to see is if the Mad-Julian oscillation is going to dislodge off of Africa and start to move. Is this La Nina actually going to get going? Because the Southern Oscillation Index just moved positive for the first time in a long time. And is atmospheric angular momentum finally going to be gaining some momentum in the Northern Hemisphere, or is it going to continue to lose? We have to ask those questions and try to figure out the answers. Because right now, what seems to be dominating our weather is really 2 things. The warmth you see here and the warmth that we see tucked away in this area right in through here. See, what's going on is we're keeping a big high pressure cell pretty far off the coast. That's good. But this blob of very warm water here in the North Pacific is keeping our jet stream way far to the north. And as a result, we're not getting any frontal boundaries coming through to really give us a well-defined precipitation forecast or even a change in temperature. This La Nina right here is pathetic at best. It just can't get its act together. But we're starting to see some stronger trade winds. And with the Southern Oscillation Index finally going positive for the first time, again, that's a comparison between the pressure over here in Darwin and the pressure in Tahiti. With that going positive, that's at least an indicator that the atmosphere is getting more Nina-like, La Nina-like. And what's got me concerned about that is tropical activity moving forward. Now, what I want to finish with is corn production in China. So this outlined map here shows you where corn is grown in China. And if you've been watching the news lately, in this particular area where possibly 10 to maybe 20% of China's corn is grown, we've had the Mayu front parked here. And I've been talking about it to you, but there's a frontal boundary that sits right in here, and it's been stuck. And in some places over the last month, right in through here, they've received more than 10 inches of rainfall. See, the color bar maxes out at 10 inches. So we could have received more than that. And if you haven't seen lately, there's been major flood fighting effort here on the river systems that run through this part of China. It reminded me a lot of what we did in 1993 on the Mississippi River, where to save some cities, we went and blew out levees to let the water flood fields. Well, they're doing that right now in China, and we need to see if this has an impact on their food supply, which could potentially impact, U.S. markets for all sorts of different foods and grains. So we'll keep a close eye on that, what's going on over here. And lastly, I hate having to give you these updates, but here's another one. You can watch the video on the left there. That is in this part of India right here, just to the east of New Delhi. We're continuing to see the desert locust spread across India while we're waiting on the Indian monsoon to kind of advance farther to the north. It's currently sitting somewhere about in that vicinity. So these locusts are moving, and this has been one of the worst years, I think, on record for locust invasions like this. We'll keep you updated, keep you posted, and we'll talk to you again next week. Thanks.